a really, really interesting point. And now we have a question from a 9-year-old rugby player. Who is the best player you've ever played with? And the best player you've ever played against? And this is for both Dan and Frazer.
Dan? Obviously, me's the best player you've played with, so let's put that one out there.
Yes, we cancel that one. I think the best, so I was lucky enough to play, when I first started playing sevens, I played against Suevi, so obviously the legend of sevens, and I remember just kind of like being in awe, being a 19-year-old kid running around against some legend on the pitch, and that was pretty cool. Didn't really see much during the game. He was stepping out at everybody. But also someone like Charles Piatal. So there's a few Kiwis. There's Charles Piatal, who's pretty good. Again, he's getting paid big bucks playing for Bristol in the UK. And it's one of the severe... that's probably the best, actually, to be fair. Played with was a Fijian guy called Damu. Sorry, Frazer. He played with me at England Sevens, and he was spectacular. He was a back and a forward at the same time. He was just incredible. He was an amazing player.
Nice. I think mine would probably, I was going to say Dan, but, because he was a bit of a game changer. He'd always win us a game if we needed it, but I'm cutting him out now. I've changed my opinion after he snubbed me. Mine would probably be a lad called Tim Stevenson, who played fly half for Hartbury, Gloucester, England. He's had quite a few teams, hasn't he, Dan? But he's a very talented player who didn't quite have the mindset of an athlete, which has stopped him going all the way. But in terms of talent and attributes, he had it all. And then they probably find the best player I played against was a lad called Guy Thompson, who I think is at Leicester, or he might have just been released from Leicester. He's an open side flanker. Played against him and got absolutely schooled for about 60 minutes, I think, and then substituted. So that would probably be the best player I've played against.
This one is also quite a good one. Will Skinner asks, Frazer, if you had done 10,000 hours of purposeful sprint training, would you have been as quick as Dan? I think he's
very good question, Will Skinner.
You.
We'll just go off previous when we used to play together. I think actually over 10 metres I was quicker than Dan, so because I was a power athlete, so we'll just stop it there and we'll go with actually that. So that, factual evidence, the same as Dan being quicker than Usain Bolt. So yeah.
Fine. Fine, whatever, mate.
And sorry if I messed up this name, but Matt Wilkes asks, if you know what you know now, what support team would you build around yourself when you were developing? I think that's a really good question.
Right question.
I think, so again, like we mentioned, I would have probably spent more time with those smaller kind of hand-eyes and those smaller kind of skills around catching and just that element. So a coach or more opportunity and more time doing that. So either with my dad or with a external coach from my rugby staff, and all on my own. And then another one would be probably from a psychological point of view. So that's probably been the biggest kind of upgrade in my game over the last couple of years. Just understanding myself more, understanding how my brain works, and some of this, because obviously when you're playing in front of X amount of people and you've got a massive 16-stone Fijian guy running towards you, or you're trying to run around him, it's understanding how to control your brain and actually be like, this is the process, and understanding that a bit more. And at the same time, you're going to have these thoughts when you're stood in the tunnel next to these guys, and you're looking up and you see these massive guys, of actually controlling your emotions, believing in the process you've already gone through, and just quieting down all the noise in your head. And that's probably the biggest part from a psychological point of view. And they speak about sport psychology and how it's growing. It's amazing, and I think I've enjoyed it firsthand with our psychologist at the England Sevens team. She's been great, and she supported my development and being a good person to talk to and listen to on and off the pitch.
I think I would probably pick, I'd probably have a movement specialist, someone like a physio, but someone to teach you how, when you're a kid, how you should move and basic things like that. So maybe potentially a sport that would be good for that would be a gymnastics coach. And then I'd probably have a nutritionist in my support team. So someone to tell you all the things at a kid that you really need to know, not just healthy eating, but, you know, getting balances. So as you grow up, you know it all. But I'd keep my parents in my support team 100%. They were absolutely phenomenal. And then just upskill them slightly, because, you know, they always fed us incredibly healthy food, but give them the knowledge of why is protein essential, why are these things essential. And then I think that little bit of upskill you would have the perfect match winning team.
Fantastic. And there's another question. What is the best country you have played against, Dan?
Yeah, I think obviously, you know, especially in sevens, there's obviously 4 or 5 good teams, the top teams who beat us most times, or we beat us more times we beat them. Yeah, New Zealand have been up there in sevens for a number of years now, and they've got this steady stream of just quality sevens players and 15s players at the same time. They're kind of rugby cultures, like doing amazing things. And obviously they had like the arrowheads of like the figureheads of just all good stuff coming out of rugby, and culture-wise, on the field, off the field, technical, tactical, all that stuff. So New Zealand's up there as a superpower. And obviously Fiji. In sevens, Fiji are renowned for their incredible ability to play the game. It's innate in their DNA. You can go across, from what I've read in people's books and seen stuff and spoken to some of the players, it's just everywhere. So the same way you may see some guys playing football in the park here in the UK, you see guys just running around playing sevens or playing rugby and just offloading and stuff in Fiji. So they're probably the 2 superpowers in sevens and 15s, to be honest.
Okay, and Patrick O'Connell asks, any advice for young players who want to play pro when they're older? I don't know if this is rugby specific or... Yes, it is rugby specific. And so, yeah, take it away.
I personally would say don't put all your eggs in one basket would be the first thing. I'd say try and don't, you know, everyone wants to be, if you're a rugby player, everyone wants to be a pro player, everyone wants to be a whatever. I'd say make sure that you have a balanced background, like we've said, of lots of different sports, because that will channel you into the sport that you eventually want to be pro in. That will make you have good skill attributes through the whole thing. I would say have other areas of interest that keep you occupied, as well as just being zoned in on the one sport. And then just try and keep learning. You'll never learn enough. And there's so many tools to learn from these days with the internet, with all of the other people that are out there. Keep learning, try and learn as much as possible. And I hate to say it, and Dan will probably back me on this, but try and follow the sort of Kiwi attributes that they have in like trying to stay humble and try to be a good person. And in being a good person, having good time skill attributes, all these sorts of things, hopefully it will lead you into being a good professional when you're older. And if you don't make it professional in sport, it will certainly make you very good in a business sense when you go into the business world, I'd say.
Yeah, I like that idea. Sorry, continue, Dan.
Sorry. I think the biggest thing, my biggest learning from sport growing up was, I keep harping on about it, but having a multi-sport kind of background, understanding the different disciplines and skills you can get from other sports and how that feeds into a strong base. And then when you get the opportunity growing up, and every kind of opportunity and every coach you speak to, like, ask questions. So if you don't know the reason why you're making this pass, or you don't know the reason why you're doing some sort of skill, then ask the question, find out more about the deeper meaning behind it all, and that will feed into more to your innate kind of your skill level. So when you have to go out and play, you won't have to worry about why you're doing it or what's going through your head. It becomes innate and secondary. And then work hard. Like, so good foundation from skill, ask questions from coaches and peer and senior players, and at the same time just work hard and enjoy it. But yeah, like Frazer said, if you're already concentrating on getting to the end goal, you're going to miss the journey of getting there. Like, I didn't plan of getting to play in the Olympics. Like, my journey came left, right, wherever. And they all kind of, all the rejections and all, and then they say all the time, but all the failures you can kind of learn from, all this opportunity you can learn from. So rather than just going from there to there, you need to understand that the process of getting there and what that looks like. And then that's understanding how to break that down. And then again, there's different skills and components you need to get there. and they're probably the biggest learnings.
Yeah, just moving on to the next question. We just have so many questions coming in, and from all sides. What do you have for breakfast? I think this is an interesting one.
I don't, well, I know Frazer has a fry up most days, as you can see from his physique. But yeah, normally I've got about an hour in the morning before kids and stuff, well, before I have to leave for training. So I'd probably have a mixture of boring porridge and like muesli with some fruit, some yogurt. Again, I don't want to have a massive meal before I train an hour before. So I normally have a decent size, because I can't eat too much in the morning, sorry. So I had a decent size of muesli and porridge with some fruit, and then a tea or some sort of hot drink. I generally have like matcha green tea, which is pretty boring. And then have a protein shake and then leave for training. Then I'll train and then we'll have lunch provided by the club. But then they're kind of, whenever you think of athletes food, it all sounds really boring and they're not really too special, because it's not. Like the way you would eat if you were an athlete or non-athlete generally should be the same. So you don't want to be eating all the rubbish fast burning food where you get this energy spikes. You want a nice plateau kind of food, and that's kind of why even when I'm not training now, I'm still eating the same kind of food, because they give you that energy and that substance to actually perform. Frazer, your fry up, what do you go for? 2 eggs, 3 sausages?
Bacon.
I'd agree with the same as Dan, yeah. Just get some healthy foods in the morning, lot of slow releasing and a bit of protein in there and a bit of hydration, and you're good.
Yeah.
And there's another one. Is there an exercise or drill that you hate or is particularly painful to you? How do you make yourself and your team do it?
Exercise, so like gym wise, it's things like, so I enjoy lower body weights. Upper body weights is okay. I don't really enjoy doing core and abs and stuff. They are the bane of my life, but at the same time I understand that if I have strong abs and core and all that kind of middle area, that helps with my speed. So if I'm strong, it helps keep my core straight. I get less back pain because my abs are switched on, my abs are strong, my hips aren't doing this when I'm running or doing this. So they all build into the bigger picture. So there's things I may not enjoy, like abs, and things I do enjoy, like leg weights. But at the same time, it's all the package of building that kind of big triangle, as people speak about.
Frazer, for you?
No,
You love all every
it all.
exercise.
You love it all, or you don't train.
Or you don't train.
Yeah, that's it.
That's one for Dan.
And so I think this one's directed at Dan. Frazer, I'm sure you can jump in. What would be your training plan to increase speed?
Yeah, so this is quite a hard one because you get asked this quite a lot. Obviously, speed is important, and something I do sessions doing. So I may do kind of 3 sessions a week doing speed, but at the same time, as Frazer touched on, that's like the small kind of margin of getting fast. The importance of getting faster is through your recovery. So if you've got your strength training sorted, your body's strong to produce force to run fast. If you're sleeping well or eating well from a nutrition point of view, your body can recover from the strength training to run fast. So it all adds into a different element. So it's not just about running fast in one session, it's about how you recover from the training previously and the training after. And at the same time, that's where parents come in again, from supporting their nutrition, their training. But yeah, for me, speed is about powerful drills, so jumps for height, covering distances, and then it's about just moving your limbs as fast as possible and getting yourself moving in the right direction.
So I think we all knew this question was coming, and it came from a Jamaican, no less. For Dan, how fast can you run 100 meters in?
So I can do the 100 in 10.3 I did that once with no trainers. No, I didn't really. Again, Frazer hates this because I've never done the 100 meters before. And I think, again, for the sport of rugby, we do 20 meters, 40 meters. They're the important times. If I did it, I think I'd probably be mid-10, so like 10.5, 10.6, like nothing too spectacular. So what's that?
How do you know you're quicker than Usain Bolt then if you've never raced 100 meters? How did that come about?
No, it's the newspaper.
Oh no, actually, that's a misquote. The quote was something like faster over 20 meters.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, if the race is 20 meters, then maybe I'd beat him, but I highly don't think that's actually true. Yeah.
I don't think. I think that it came from a Jamaican there. That they want to test to see if that fact's true.
Yeah, they're trying to dig it alive.
Frazer, I think this is a really good one for you. Can you describe your transition from player to coach, and what were your changes in mentality and challenges you had?
That's a very, very good question, actually. So when I switched from player to coach, I was still at Hartbury when I first started coaching. So the group of players that I was coaching were pretty talented. So it was actually quite easy because they were almost quite robotic. They knew what they were doing. So you give them stuff to do, they would get on with it and do it, and they would crack on. I carried on coaching at Hartbury, but I then moved to a local rugby club called Drybrook, who were full of talented players, but they also had jobs, etc. And they weren't as talented as the Hartbury players to start with. And it took a lot of changing my coaching philosophy, not being able to just say, right, go and do this, because they couldn't go and do it. It would then be demonstrations, it would be cues, like trying to say things to people that would get them to understand, not just barking an order at them, which someone might understand from a real rugby background. It's breaking it down and changing the words so that people can understand it a little bit. So I'd say that was probably the hardest transition, and that took a couple of years. And the other thing is understanding that depending on the level you're coaching, majority of people want to win, but people's attitudes to how they want to win will differ. So how much effort they're prepared to put in leading up to a competition to make sure they win changes hugely based on who you're coaching. And that's the hardest thing for a coach to get your head around, why only 40% of your team might turn up training, or on a Thursday night, it's your team run night before a game on a Saturday and your key player's missing because he's stuck at work. How do you change your training session to fit around that sort of stuff? And I know Dan and I coach together at the moment at a local rugby club in the UK, and that's probably the hardest thing. We plan sessions, and then you turn up and you may as well just rip the piece of paper in half and do something completely different, because 9 times out of 10 your personnel aren't there. So you kind of need to have a plan A, plan B, and be really adaptable. And I think that's the difference between playing and coaching, is you turn up as a player with a good mindset. And we had an incredible coach, a guy called Al Lewis, absolutely bonkers mental, but an incredible coach. And you would turn up and he would have everything planned out and you would do it and you'd get on. But you couldn't replicate, as a coach, you couldn't replicate his stuff with other people. And you have to find your own coaching philosophy and your own coaching hat and then get on with it.
And I think this is really interesting. We talked about parents. Deborah asked a bit of a difficult question, so prepare yourselves. How often do you see parents inadvertently sabotage their kids by pushing too hard or expecting too much?
Dan or me?
Go on.
I think actually it was an incredibly good question. And when I was in Singapore, I saw it a lot, and now I've moved back to the UK and I live in Buckinghamshire. I see it probably even more, because they're very similar places in terms of the education systems. I don't see it so much in a sporting environment. I didn't see it very much in Singapore in sport, and I don't see it that much in sport here, but I see it hugely in education, and parents are massively, massively pushy in making their kids, obviously academia is the most important thing for them, and they forget all the other components that surround academia by making them a better, more humble kid, that actually when they go into real life, they'll be able to, manage themselves better by making them be able to speak to adults. When they go into an adult world later on, they can then communicate with adults and stuff. Yeah. And I think from myself and Dan, I think our parents did a really good job at making us quite humble and making us, by hanging around rugby clubs and stuff like that and interacting with adults, we have that attribute to be able to do it. And so I think that's probably the biggest pushy side of things that I've seen. In terms of sport, you always get the odd parent screaming and shouting on the sideline who wants their kid to be the next Jonah Lomu or whatever, and they're not quite seeing it. But I think the RFU especially are doing quite well with snapping out the side of coaching and parents on the sideline that are really pushy like that.
Yeah, and this one is a bit lighter. Patrick O'Connell wants to know who will win the Six Nations when it resumes.
If it resumes.
If it resumes.
It was so long ago, I can't even remember who was in the running. Let's chuck France in the mix. They're always good for a laugh. Let's go with that.
Yeah, I think it'll be out of France and England, won't it? I think they're the two, really.
Ireland?
Who?
Ireland?
Are they not for the wooden spoon again this year? No, I don't know. I think it'll be tough. Like, I think it's been a good one so far. Obviously, England lost to France, didn't they? If again, it feels so long ago.
It does.
I think France had it to lose, don't they? So.
Yeah.
And Dan, if you weren't as fast as you are now, which position would you play? Prop.
I like to think I'll be a fly half, to be honest, from my skill set. No, I don't know. I think I probably would have been a fullback or probably a fullback. I think add some value to the game.
Okay, and I think this is a good one to finish up on because, believe it or not, we're quite a bit past when we're supposed to be. But Frazer, what does the mindset of an athlete look like?
Wow, there we go. I think they have to be very self-centered and they have to be very driven. I think of an elite athlete, I mean, an athlete can be anything, but of an elite athlete, I think they need to have a goal. And that goal has to be quite self-centered and quite driven. But then at the same time, all the things that we've spoken about in terms of, being humble and being a nice person and stuff, they fit in. But I think very, very goal-orientated. Like, what do you want to get to? How are you going to get there? Small stages, big stages, the final stage. And they have to zone in on that type of attitude and be very, very goal-driven.
Yeah, self-confidence, confidence in your own ability, knowing that whatever setbacks you have, they're not like the real representation of yourself. Like, if you have that goal, you're going to get to, an injury or potentially saying you're rubbish or having a bad game, they're only parts of how you can get better. And understanding how you can get better and having that mindset, again, a good mindset is something as well. Being able to get to that position is what you kind of aim for. But then those are the stuff that they're away from rugby, in the rugby or in sport itself, that graft, that work rate, that unrelenting kind of intensity. Someone like Rafa Nadal, when you watch him play, he's ferocious. Every shot, energy he brings, and that's kind of how he trains, and that's powerful. So, there's a child.
A little child in the background, there we go.
You say hello? No. They're probably the skills. Having that element of having that ferocity and that mindset as well is powerful.
Multitasking as well, clearly.
Trying to.
And I think it's a really good place to wrap it up. We just want to say thank you to Inner Leadership, who kind of put this together, and a massive thank you to Dan and Frazer. Inner Leadership is the whole idea of leading from within, and I think it's more pertinent now than ever to support this. And for those of you that clicked on with your email, we'll be sending like kind of follow-up emails and stuff like that, and I'm sure Dan and Fraser would be happy to answer more questions. We're getting a lot of thank you notes now, so thank you for everyone for clicking on, and I hope we kind of answered your questions. And Dan and Fraser will have influenced a lot more Olympians or parents of Olympians or parents of pro athletes. And yeah, thank you so much for clicking on today.
Yeah, thank you all. Thank you all for listening.